Hello everyone and welcome back to Always Watching. Today we are discussing Severance Season 2, Episode 4, Woe's Hollow. And this is another jam-packed episode. We finally find out that Helena is in fact masquerading as her innie, thanks to Irving. And I love how the episode begins and ends with Irving. Irving has been very unhappy and very suspicious of Helly. And Helly's outie has never really had any respect for the innies. However, she does fear them, which explains why she refused to allow her innie to continue working on the severed floor. Mr. Milchick really did do his best to keep her identity a secret. And I think, unfortunately for Mr. Milchick, this unraveled what little trust he had built with the innies, especially with Dylan. And this retreat started off with so much potential. I'm very happy that we're finally out of the office. He organizes this outdoor retreat again, claiming that he listened and he's really trying to create this hospitable environment. However, rather than simulate a warm and welcoming environment, he simulates a very cold and isolating one. The retreat is an opportunity for the innies to view him as an equal and also instill company loyalty. Framed as this team building exercise, Mr. Milchick claims that this is a rare opportunity for the innies to find out more about their beloved founder. Their task is to follow the signs to a place called Scissor Cave. Legend has it that Kier bravely ventured into the depths of his mind to tame these traits that he believes really are key to understanding the human condition. In order to find the cave, the innies have to follow these signs. And these signs are their double, wearing work clothes, pointing in a certain direction in the dead of winter. And this path to the cave is really long and cold and scary, and it really does feel like anything can happen, like they are the only people on the planet. And since the innies are not really familiar with the real world, they don't really know what's normal and what's not. And Mr. Milchick is smart in that he simulates this real world environment without any actual people or anyone outside of this department. According to Mr. Milchick, this cave is home to a book too sacred for the severed floor. The cave is dark and small, and the book is really easy to find. According to the text, Kier had a twin brother, and apparently he loved his brother so much it unbalanced his judgment. The book implies that his twin was weak and gives them a map to follow to a place called Woe's Hollow. The book is written in kind of a poor man's Shakespeare, and we are given information meant to highlight the great lengths Kier went to apparently tame these four tempers. The more information we get about Kier, the more unsettled Irving becomes. Throughout the trip, he keeps pushing the Helly issue, and he's getting louder and louder. And Irving is the only innie that we've seen that really bought into Kier's word and really believes in the ideology of Lumen. On paper, Kier's words seem very inspiring. However, this is until you realize it's a perversion meant to control employees and solicit their obedience. And this is something that Irving is slowly clocking into. There's a huge discrepancy between Kier's teachings and the way Lumen operates. We never find out if Irving ever made it to the exports hall. However, whatever he saw clearly unnerved him. During the trip, he confronts Mark about flirting with Helly and even panics to the point of wanting to eat this, what seemed like a dead seal. In theory, Lumen is supposed to protect them and make sure nothing happens to the innies. However, the way Irving is acting, he kind of believes that anything is possible. Like, he just doesn't feel safe anymore. They eventually find Mr. Milchick, who lies and says they made it to the tallest waterfall in the world. He's standing above them with their body doubles, lecturing about how Lumen will always protect and provide. The only thing Irving cares about is food, and the fact that he's so focused on his survival. Eventually make it to this really nice camp where they're exposed to fire for the first time, and watching the innies react to the outside world was really cute. Like, I think at one point Dylan says, "I know there was no ceiling, but this is crazy." I thought the fire was appropriate because everyone on this trip will undergo a huge transformation that will trigger intense emotions. At the camp, Helly tries to approach Irving and make a peace offering, and Irving is not convinced. And Helly is trying, but Irving is not giving her the response that she wants, and I felt like her reaction really gave her away. She seemed really smug and almost like she was looking down on him. During their first bonfire or gathering, Mr. Milchick decides it's a good time to tell the team how Kier's twin brother died. During an outing in the woods, Kier's twin, Dieter, was really reluctant to go back to the real world, believing that they could just live in nature forever. His death is described as a really violent unraveling from the inside out. It's in this moment that Kier comes across one of the four tempers, Woe, in the form of a gaunt bride who blames him for his brother's death. And this whole process of taming the four tempers, like this self-taming process, is a very violent one. And based on this story, I mean, you can kind of interpret it in many different ways. But Kier's ability to tame these tempers almost made him indifferent to the horrors around him. And you can kind of see that with Mr. Milchick. He's aware of everything Lumen is capable of, and yet he's able to just turn a blind eye, something that's getting increasingly more difficult to do. And it's crazy to think how much horror corporations are capable of and how indifferent we've become to it. Like, it's gotten to the point where like nothing surprises us anymore. The story resonates with everyone except for Helena, who starts laughing. And this is the moment where she begins to undermine Mr. Milchick, because Mr. Milchick had done such a great job of telling the story. And you could tell all the innies were super invested and they were really captivated by it. And Helena's reaction totally ruined it. And based on the last episode, Mr. Milchick is already kind of barely tolerating this company. And as much as the company claims to value him and his work, their actions suggest otherwise. And you see this with the way Helena is laughing and basically just totally undoing all the work Mr. Milchick had done. Mr. Milchick is so upset that he burns the marshmallow, and then he makes a subtle threat at Dylan, saying that marshmallows are for team players. The story triggers Irving, who at this point has had enough, and calls out Helly and Mark S. And I thought what he said to Mark S. was quite savage, saying that he's flirting with Helly while his Audi's dead wife rots. He continuously pushes Helly about the night gardener, and Helly's description of this gardener, or her unwillingness to really explain herself, I think really highlights what she thinks of the innies. Like, she doesn't really think they're that intelligent, or that really they're capable of much. Irving's innie may not know that much about the outside world, but he definitely knows enough to sense when something's off. Helena totally misreads Irving just like she does her innie. She really underestimates what he's capable of. The only time I thought it could be Helly's innie is when Helly and Mark first sleep together. In general, I find that they have no chemistry. Like, I don't know how to describe their chemistry. It's like there's something there, but there's also nothing there, and it's just such a strange dynamic. While they're together, she admits that she doesn't really like who she is on the outside. And I think a part of her desire to work on the severed floor was to try and unlock this happiness her innie had. Like, she wanted to feel some type of joy for once in her life. While they are together, we start to see the effects of reintegration on Mark's innie. This scene of Helly and Mark is paired with Irving going out into the woods alone. For whatever reason, Irving decides to venture out by himself. And when his fire goes out, he finds himself completely alone in the dark. Tired, he falls asleep and starts to dream about his office, except this time his office is outside and everything just looks really old and worn out. And at first, this dream seems really ideal. He sees Bert again for the first time, and he's really happy about it. However, his dream quickly turns into a nightmare when he notices this gaunt bride that Mr. Milchick was describing in his story. This bride, of course, represents one of the four tempers. She appears very old and very angry. And death, in this sense, is transformation. It's the start of something new. Without Bert, Irving's innie really has no reason to hold back. During the dream, he starts refining and he notices the numbers appear very chaotic. But before he can kind of figure out what it all means, he snapped back into reality. The dream literally lights a fire under him, and he immediately goes after Helly. And the way Irving woke up, I mean, he woke up with a vengeance. He basically at this point is telling her, either admit it or I'm going to make you admit it. And I love that Helly was staring at the waterfall, because the episode begins with Irving on the ice, and Irving has really been on thin ice, and in the end it's Helly who falls through the cracks. And this is the second time Helly has gravely underestimated these innies. And as soon as Helly called Mr. Milchick Seth, everyone realized that it was indeed Helly's Audi. And I thought Seth's reaction was really interesting because he was paralyzed. He didn't know what to do at all. At this point, he's damned either way, because he will be blamed for everything that went down. And the way Mr. Milchick fires Irving was one of the most savage things I have ever seen. He tells him that not only are you fired, you will cease to exist. So there is no clocking back in for Irving's innie. He then commands him into the forest before obliterating his existence. And although he may be able to destroy Irving's innie, no, he can't really destroy the memory of Irving. I don't know why, but watching Dylan's reaction made me really laugh. Like the whole time I'm like, close your mouth, bro. Like this show is like half comedy, half drama. Irving's face at the end really does seem like someone who had tamed their four tempers. He seems very at peace with his decision. He exposed Helly knowing what the consequences would be, and his reaction and his courage will have devastating effects on the innies. Because on one hand, this whole retreat was about how wonderful Kira is and how, Lumen protects and provides for them, and yet everything they do is the opposite. This discrepancy between Lumen's teachings and their actions is something that the other innies will definitely take note of. And so overall, I thought this was a fantastic episode. There was definitely a lot to unpack regarding Kier and this creepy family and all these lies that they tell. But you guys let me know what you think, and until next time.